Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we are diving deep into a rapidly escalating conflict between the United States and Venezuela. And you know, this story doesn't start with a political summit or a speech. It starts with a pulse-pounding, high-stakes rescue out on the open sea.
To really get what's happening here, we have to start right in the middle of the action. I mean, this is straight out of a movie. That's the voice of Brian Stern, a former military vet. And his team, they just pulled off one of the riskiest missions you can imagine.
The mission was codenamed Operation Golden Dynamite. And yeah, it was every bit as dangerous as it sounds. We're talking about a complex, multi-stage plan to get one person who'd been in hiding for nearly a year out of the country and to safety.
I mean, just look at the complexity here. This wasn't some simple pickup. This was an incredibly detailed operation with land, sea, and air components. Each phase had its own massive risks, and it was all carried out by a nonprofit group of former military veterans.
And get this, the group behind the rescue, Grey Bull, they're not amateurs. This was their 800th mission, but even they said this one was their most challenging yet. The first, they said, for someone who has their own Wikipedia page. So who exactly were they risking everything for?
And that question brings us right to the heart of this conflict. It's really about two Venezuelas. The whole thing boils down to this deep, bitter struggle for power between an authoritarian ruler and a celebrated opposition leader, who to many represents a totally different future for the country.
So on one side, you've got Nicolás Maduro, the disputed president who's been tightening his grip on power, and on the other, María Corina Machado. She had just won the Nobel Peace Prize for her democratic challenge to Maduro, but she couldn't even go accept it. Why? Because Maduro had threatened her with arrest right after her party won an election that he then refused to recognize.
But here's the thing, Machado's escape, it didn't happen in a vacuum, not at all. It came at the exact moment the United States was dramatically ramping up the pressure on Maduro's regime, shifting from sanctions to something much, much more aggressive.
And you can really see that escalation on this timeline. I mean, just look at how things have ramped up over the last 10 months. It starts with legal and financial moves, but then it quickly shifts to deploying major military assets, then direct strikes, and finally, sending America's biggest aircraft carrier to the region.
And this latest move? It hit Maduro right in the wallet, seizing a tanker carrying $80 million in oil. Of course, Maduro's government immediately called it an act of piracy. So it all leads to a crucial question. What is all this pressure really about?
Well, depending on who you ask, you get two totally different stories explaining what's happening. The U.S. government says it's all about stopping crime, while Venezuela is adamant that this is just a resource grab.
And that's the central question, isn't it? What is the endgame here? Is this really a campaign against narco-terrorists like the U.S. claims it is? Or, as Maduro alleges, is this all just a prelude to a war for Venezuela's massive oil reserves?
Okay, so here's the official line from the U.S. It's all about national security. The State Department is framing this as a fight against drug cartels that are poisoning Americans and simply enforcing the sanctions that are already in place.
But Maduro, he's telling a very different story. In a really defiant speech, he compared what's happening now to past U.S. interventions in other countries. He's positioning himself as the guy defending his nation against a foreign power, trying to steal their resources. And his message was crystal clear: no blood for oil.
So all of this, the rhetoric, the rescue, the sanctions, it brings us to the final and frankly the most alarming question of all. With this huge military buildup, just how close are we to a full-blown war?
And when we say military buildup, we're not kidding. The hardware is serious. We're talking an aircraft carrier, a dozen warships, and specialized aircraft like EA-18 Growlers. Those are designed to jam enemy radar and take out missile sites. And to make things even more tense, the U.S. president has said that land operations could start fairly soon.
Now, this kind of military move, it is definitely not going unnoticed. It's raising huge alarms, even inside the U.S. government. Some very high-level lawmakers are saying they're afraid the administration is basically sleepwalking into a war without any real plan or public discussion.
But, maybe the most chilling part of this whole situation is the uncertainty coming from the people who are supposed to know. When a senior member of the Senate Intelligence Committee, someone who gets the most sensitive briefings in the entire country, is asked if the U.S. is going to war, and his answer is just, "I don't know," well, that tells you just how volatile and unpredictable this moment truly is.
So what's the big takeaway here? A conflict that's been simmering for years has finally reached a boiling point. All the pieces are on the board. You've got a newly freed opposition leader who can now rally the world, and you have a U.S. military force sitting right off the coast. The question now is, what happens next? And the answer to that is dangerously unclear.